Welcome to another Gem Talk with me. It's Michael Valitutti. I'm a graduate gemologist, and this one is about color change purple garnet that comes out of Tanzania. Specifically, it comes from East Tanzania, the Morogoro region, and that is, like I said, located East Tanzania. I think it's about from the capital 155 miles approximately away from their capital city. Well, usually I find out about gemstone discoveries and things like this. Honestly, number one is when I go to gemstones, gem shows, I should say. And sometimes I find them when I actually do some of my gem trips. I'll go to a mine and they'll say, you know, we just found this, we're looking at this. What do you think it is? And that's actually how I come up with a lot of the newer things that I present when I'm on television. This was one that actually came to being, for me at least, when I read about it in Gems and Gemology. So back in 2015, I noticed that when I received my Gems and Gemology in the mail, which of course is the quarterly journal of the Gemological Institute of America, which is where I received my gemological diploma and training. They had this article about a color change garnet. Now, honestly, most color change garnets that I've seen are okay, but in one of their colors, you know, because obviously color change is going to get two colors. In one of the colors, it'll be good. The other one will be like, kind of grayish and all that, not very attractive. So I was struck when I read the article about how beautiful this was. Very, very beautiful stone. And this occurred in the winter of 2015. In the fall, September of 2016, I go to the Hong Kong show. And I go with this magazine. And I go booth to booth, and I'm looking for the stone. There was only one guy who had a little bit of it. That order didn't go through, and I traced it down to the actual source of the person mentioned in the article that actually was one of the first people to not only discover it, but to basically buy out all the allotment that the mine was producing at the time. And it was one of the best scores of my career. Honestly, it was. I was in the right place at the right time, and I was very persistent to find this because I had to see it in real life. And I got to tell you, I was absolutely thrilled when I found this stone because I've never seen a color change garnet. And I will demonstrate that to you at some point in this talk, and I'll do it live here. The color change property that was so distinct, so pure, not one where you have to sit back going, am I really seeing that? You know what I mean? It's like one color, purple, and the other color pink. Pink, purple, and it's like in your face. Well, when I was at the show and I went to the booth and I laid my eyes on this, I mean, are you seeing this? Are you kidding me? The color absolutely blew me away. And then with my fancy flashlight, which of course does daylight and outdoor light, outdoor light and indoor light, I was using the flashlight and I couldn't believe the color change. It was absolutely exquisite. And like all garnet, you can see some people there at the booths and they're looking at it and they're absolutely loving it and all this. And then I did a test, and I will show it to you here, but that's the color change property. And it goes, of course, from the pink that you're seeing here. And that's what you're going to see in indoor light. In outdoor light, you're going to see, of course, this wonderful, beautiful purple. And this is all natural. Now, like all garnets, this is not color treated whatsoever. So as I mentioned, it is found only in Tanzania. Now, there are other purple garnets out there. They do not color change like this one color changes. And I want to demonstrate the color change property. So here I have the rough over here, and here are the cut stones. This is exactly how we find it. Now, this is a pen flashlight, and this would be an incandescent light source. What does that mean? You know the old regular light bulbs, you know the ones we had in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you know, the normal ones. The ones when you touch them, they're hot to the touch. That's called an Edison bulb, invented by Thomas Edison, and still lights up most American homes today. And this is what it'll look like, and we call that indoor light, because that's the light that we have indoors. But when you take this out on a nice sunny day, you know, like in July and June, the sun is shining, look what happens. That is not camera trickery. That is just live, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the purple color. I mean, it's just fantastic. And then when I rush back in, guess what? it changes again. So this has, what I'm demonstrating here, and I'm going to do it again, this is probably, in my opinion, and I started in this business in 1980, so it's been 42 years in this business. This is the best color change property that I've ever seen in any garnet. And I'll be honest with you, most Alexandrite, most of it doesn't even have color change of this caliber. You can see it's right there in the rough itself. This is when they cut it, and there it is in the rough. Now, do you notice how sparkly it is? Okay, the reason is that this has a very good refractive index, has a very high refractive index, which is very, very important. It's about 7.5 on the Mohs scale, so it's something, of course, ladies and gentlemen, that you can safely wear every single day, and there's no problem with wearing it away. Also, this will not color fade. So that's something very, very, very important. It's not going to color fade. Now, another very important thing about this color change garnet, I really want to demonstrate this, is that sometimes when we have stones that have that color change property, we are forced to stick to the larger stones for that to be visible. What we found amazing about the stone is that even in the smaller stones, you see that little tiny stone right there at the forefront? These little tiny stones? Even if I cut the stone in a 1 carat size, 3/4 carat, 1/2 carat, even 5-point size, even to the size of a head of a pin, the color change phenomena is consistent, and so is the color. Now that's very important. Why is that important? Because for you to get yourself a very beautiful piece of jewelry, you do not have to spend a lot of money in this garnet. That's the beauty of it. And this is why when I'm on television, I can present this stone in so many different fashions. It's not like it's a stone where, oh, Michael, everything is $300, $400, $500, $600. It's not like that with this stone. This stone, you can get that same intensity in every single size range. So to me, this is something that's very, very important because the customer ultimately is able to experience this luxury, this color change property, and not spend a lot of money. Now, what is this garnet? Technically, it falls in the pyrope rhodolite. Pyrope and rhodolite is really a mixture of pyrope and almandine. So remember when I did my talk on other garnets? Garnets are a group, they're like a group of cousins. And they can be intermarried. They can have chemical elements that are a little bit of one, a little bit of another. So really when you look at a garnet, rarely do you find a garnet and it's just pure almandine. It'll have maybe 5 or 10% of another garnet mixed into it. It's just the way garnets form. So technically this garnet here, it's magnesium, aluminum, silicon oxide, but it also has a little bit of iron. So that kind of pushes it into the rhodolite. But the color change property that you're seeing, the coloring elements that make it what it is, there's 2 very important elements, vanadium and chromium. Those, by the way, are the same coloring elements that we have in emerald. They're the same coloring elements as in the chromium that you want to see that make a fine ruby, that make some fine spinel. So chromium is one of those elements that really super jazzes a gemstone. So what's happening when I use the different wavelengths of light is that it's reacting with these elements. So one color will be emphasized, the other one suppressed, and then the other color comes up. So let me explain to you. The visible light spectrum that we see, it's 400 to 700 nanometers. It's part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, and the nanometers, it refers to the wavelengths. Remember that in science we studied the lengths between the trough and the bottom, the trough and the top of the wave? That's called the wavelength. So the wavelength for visible light is 400 to 700 nanometers. So when I use my flashlight and when we're indoors, most of the wavelength that we see from regular incandescent light bulbs is about that 600 to 700 nanometer. There's a lot of emphasis in the warmer, the yellow, the reds. That's why indoor light has a little bit more of a yellowy tinge. Notice that when you go in sunlight, it's more blue because with the sun, you're getting what's called ultraviolet light. And ultraviolet light is that, really it's 400 nanometer and below. So it's around that blue range, okay? So This is why the two different colors are being emphasized by the light that you are using. Now, if you try that same thing with a regular red garnet or with a peridot or with a ruby, it really doesn't change the color. But with this stone, it does, because again, it's those two coloring elements that are present. And that's why indoors, okay, you've got here the vanadium happening, and then we switch to the chromium. And that's exactly what's happening, is these elements that are actually, now that's a simplified explanation. I can go into a very long, geeky explanation to the science behind it, but I find it's too long for these presentations. Now, what I told you, the Mohs hardness is great, 7, 7.5. It will not color fade. Garnets, including these ones, are not color treated whatsoever. So there is nothing that they do to it to make it better. They're born with a very high refractive index, so it's going to be sparkly. They're also relatively clean. So when you look inside these stones with a loupe, you don't see a lot happening in there. That's a good thing about these stones. They're clean. So rarely in nature do we find a stone untreated that the color is consistent and perfect from a large stone to a little tiny stone. Rarely do you find that. Now, like all good things, it's limited. I'm sorry, it's just the way things are. So this one was only mine for a few short years. I luckily have the best contact in the world for this particular true color change garnet, and I'm able to give you phenomenal, consistent quality. What I want to show you is how our garnets form. They're formed like this, through what we call pegmatites. Most of the gemstones that we use and sell are actually formed with pegmatite. There's your magma, there is your mafic rock. Of course, you have the what's called a pegmatite intrusion, and it's in this pocket that all these gemstones will form. In East Africa, just like Brazil, has a lot of pegmatite deposits. But when it comes to things like garnets, I find East Africa, especially Tanzania, is a phenomenal source for that. So that is your purple color change garnet from Tanzania. Like I said, there is a rhodolite purple garnet out there. It's not this color, and it will not color change. This is the real color change variety that I have. It's spectacular, it's beautiful. Of all the garnets I've ever sold, I think I'm more excited about this color change variety than any other garnet that I've ever sold, because I think it offers you, the customer, so much. And I don't have to give you a big stone to give you that color effect. Because of my contacts, I'm able to keep the prices low. And it is one of the most consistent gemstones I've ever sold, which means whether I cut it small or large, the color is always the same. And no matter how much I buy of it, it's always the same. But it is something that's very limited. And in an untreated stone, it really is a gift. Of course, it is the birthstone for January. But I think this garnet, I mean, it really took the world by storm. I think, had they still mined it, and that's the problem with these super fine stones, is that they run out of them. And I always find that in gems, and you know, that when they find something that's truly spectacular, it's always limited, because so many different elements and things have to happen in nature when they form a gemstone, that the finest specimens are rare, like it is with diamonds or any other gemstone. So the point I want to make is that if this supply was much bigger, if this was a big mine like it is in rubies or emeralds or diamonds, I think this garnet would have been the #1 selling garnet in history. That's what I think. I think you give this garnet 10, 15 years in the market, no one will ever want the other garnets anymore. They would have wanted this, because you simply can't beat it for the quality, the price, the color change phenomena, the clarity, its spectacular brilliance, its color consistency. I mean, it's got everything. It really does. So I hope you enjoy it while I still do have it available, and that is the purple color change garnet from Tanzania.